Good evening, everyone. It's now 6 o'clock and we will begin this annual meeting of electors of the town of Victoria Park. So I will declare the meeting formally open. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. Nunjarapan Wajak Nunga Budja Yakin Nidja Bilya Barduk. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Nunga country on the banks of the Swan River. Nankadach Nunga Mort Ken Kadak Nidja Wajak Nunga Budja. Nankadach Nidja Nunga Brodia Kora. Yeye, Border, Balapan, Mordich, Nunga Kadajan, Mort, Webudja, Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nanyunka, Balapan, Nunga, Brodia, We Mort, Nidja Budja. I thank them for the contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region. Item 2 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. First and foremost, welcome everyone to this annual meeting of electors. The annual meeting of electors is required to be held once every financial year under the Local Government Act for the purpose of discussing the annual report and any other general business. I do have a number of things to read out to you, so please bear with me, but these will be useful for you if you wish to participate in this annual meeting of electors. The role of the person presiding, which is myself tonight, is to run the meeting in accordance with the order of proceedings. The presiding member is entitled to also move, second, speak to and vote on motions in their capacity as an elector. The role of elected members is that they are entitled to attend this meeting and they are also able to move, second, speak to and vote on motions in their capacity as an elector. Please note elected members are not required to attend this meeting, but there are a number of my fellow elected members who are in attendance tonight and I welcome them all. They are sitting in their usual seats to allow space for members of the public to occupy the public gallery. The role of the Town of Victoria Park's employees is so that as senior members of the staff, they're in attendance tonight to be able to provide any information, to answer any questions that you may have and to assist with the smooth running of the meeting. The role of electors. An elector is a person who is eligible to be enrolled to vote in elections for the district. Electors are required to sign our attendance register to provide their name and address in order to confirm whether they are electors of the town before they can participate in the meeting. You're not required, by the way, to be an elector to simply sit in the gallery, but if you wish to speak to a motion, ask questions, make statements or move and second motions, you do need to be an elector. So, electors may raise any motion that is related to the responsibilities and the functions of local government. Each elector who is present at the meeting of electors is entitled to one vote on each matter to be decided, but is not required to vote. Decisions that are made at electors' meetings will be considered by our council at the next ordinary council meeting following tonight, or as soon as reasonably practicable after that. I do need to refer you to our specific provisions about the recording of this meeting. Meetings of electors that are held in this council chambers are to be recorded and live streamed to the town's website in accordance with Regulation 14I of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. Furthermore, under Clause 39, subsection 1 of the Town's Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, I do not give permission to any other person to make a recording of the proceedings of this meeting. So that relates to both audio recordings and video recordings. They are done in an official capacity by the Town of Victoria Park staff. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and their voice may be live streamed to the public by attending this meeting. Recordings will also be available on the town's website following the meeting. The minutes of an electors' meeting will record a summary only of the meeting and the decisions made. It will not be a verbatim record of what occurs at an electors' meeting. Participating at this electors' meeting is effectively governed by Regulation 18 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, and the procedures to be followed at this electors' meeting are to be determined by the person presiding over the meeting, which tonight is myself. I have determined the following procedures will apply for this annual meeting of electors. These are general matters first. 1. Only electors of the town of Victoria Park are entitled to speak and vote. Secondly, the meeting will be conducted in line with the town's Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019. Where the Meeting Procedures Local Law makes no provision, the procedures shall be otherwise as determined by myself as the presiding member. 3. There is to be no adverse reflection from any elector at the meeting, and any elector addressing the meeting is to extend due courtesy and respect to elected members, town employees and your fellow members of the community, and it must comply at all times with any direction given by me as presiding member. Should an elector reflect adversely on another person or not extend due respect to another person, the question or statement that is being made at the time will be ruled out of order, and the elector may be asked to rephrase or they may be asked to cease speaking. 4. Questions, statements and motions are limited to matters that are within the remit of the Town of Victoria Park under the Local Government Act 1995. In relation to questions, point 5, electors will be offered an opportunity to ask a maximum of 4 questions each. This is to ensure that there is a fair and equitable opportunity for everybody who wishes to ask questions to do so. 6. Any questions that are unable to be responded to at this meeting will be taken on notice. If a question is taken on notice, a written response will be provided as soon as possible to the person who asked the question, and it will be included on the agenda of the next council meeting. Or if that is not possible, it will go on the agenda of a following council meeting after that. Statements. This is point 7. Electors who wish to make a statement, again, about matters that are within the remit and jurisdiction of the town under the Local Government Act, will have a maximum of 2 minutes in which to make their statement. That, again, is to ensure a fair and equitable opportunity for everyone who wishes to ask to make a statement to do so. Motions. Point 8. Any motions are to be moved and seconded before anyone speaks to the motion. So in other words, if you are going to move a motion, you need to say what your motion is. If you've already pre-submitted it, we will endeavour to put it up on the big screen. If you haven't pre-submitted it, as in you haven't let us know in advance, you may need to bear with us so we can get something up on the screen that everyone can see. But again, you can't speak to your motion to explain why you're moving it or why you want to speak in support of it until it has a seconder, and I will call from that seconder from amongst those of you who are present. Point 9, the mover of the motion will have 3 minutes total to speak on the motion. Point 10, the presiding member will ask all electors present if there is any dissent to the motion, and if there is no dissent to the motion, I will simply put it to the vote of those who are present, and the vote will be recorded. If there is an indication of dissent, and you may do that by raising your hand or drawing to my attention that you are in dissent of the motion, then those speakers who wish to speak against the motion in dissent will have 3 minutes in which to speak against the motion. Point 12, following speakers against the motion, the mover of the motion will have a right of reply for up to 2 minutes maximum. I need to stress that the right of reply is not an opportunity to reopen your argument on the motion. It is for you to reply to those in dissent. So if those in dissent make 2 or 3 points against your motion, try to confine your right of reply to the points that have been taken against you in your motion. And point 13, all motions will be determined by a simple majority vote of the electors present. And again, reminding you that you are not required to vote, but if you do decide to vote, your votes will be counted so we can determine if by a simple majority the motion has passed or has been lost. If it is passed, I'll declare it passed. If it has been lost, I'll declare it's lost. Voting. Point 14, voting is to be conducted by show of hands so that no voter's vote is secret. This is a requirement under local government legislation. When you are directed to do so, electors who wish to vote will raise their hand to show support for or against the motion. If you're unable to raise your hand, please draw attention to our council support staff and they will assist you to make your position known in another way. 15, each elector present at this meeting is entitled, as I've already said, to only 1 vote on each matter to be decided. So those are the rules for how we will proceed. But fear not, when we get to the stage, if there are motions, I'll be more than happy to reiterate some of those rules and just remind you as we go along, because at this point in time, I'm not sure just how many motions, if any, we're going to receive. So we now move to item 3 on the agenda, which is attendance. We have at present, as it turns out, all elected members of the town of Victoria Park, save for one. So on that basis, I think you can probably all see those who are sitting in the elected member seats. We also have a number of members of the town's executive staff who are led by our CEO, Mr. Carl Askew, who sits to my left, but to most of you is sitting in a different position. And he and members of his staff may answer some of your questions if you have them, if I direct those persons to answer questions. And this is a good opportunity for you to take that chance to ask questions that you might have wanted to ask about matters going on in the town of Victoria Park. So we move now to item 4 on the agenda, which is discussion about the contents of the annual report. And it is a requirement under local government legislation that at an annual meeting of electors, the first item of business that we discuss is the annual report, and thereafter we discuss general matters, which is where questions, statements and motions fall. So in terms of item 4, we will hear from myself first. We'll then hear from the Chief Executive Officer. Our Chief Financial Officer will speak to the financial statements and the auditor's report. Some of you may have picked up a hard copy of the annual report when you came in tonight. All the documentation about our report to our electorate, about our achievements in the financial year ended 30 June 2024 are contained in that document. It is also available online. And finally, we will be showing a very short video, which is the highlights of the achievements we had, ones that the community can follow that are much more interesting for many people than reading facts and figures in an annual report of some length. So we're now about to go through that process for item 4 itself. So beginning 4.1 with the Mayor's report. So I am pleased to present the annual report for 2023-2024 at this annual meeting of electors. Despite economic pressures of rising inflation, supply chain delays and labour shortages continuing to impact service and project delivery during that financial year, the year continued to be one of consolidation for the town. Despite the challenges, and to our credit, the town has continued to prioritise our values and the delivery of services to the community. Financially, the town is making steady progress in meeting its key strategic outcomes for both the short and the long term. We did make advancements on a number of major projects, including Lathlane Precinct Redevelopment Zone 1, Edward Millen Precinct Redevelopment, Archer Mint Streetscape Improvement Plan and the Kent Street Sandpit Ecological Restoration Project. From a strategic planning perspective, importantly, the financial year ended 30 June 2024 saw the adoption of the new Health and Wellbeing Strategy from 2023 to 2028, which replaces our previous statutory requirement to have a public health plan. There was also a new environment plan from 2023 to 2028 to replace our old and then outdated environment plan. And finally, and I'm only just highlighting a couple now, the town's second Reconciliation Action Innovate Plan for 2023 through to 2025, which marks a new chapter in our journey of reconciliation with First Nations people. Council also endorsed the long-awaited new Statutory Local Planning Scheme number 2 to replace Town Planning Scheme number 1, which did actually commence in 1995, and we have existed with a very old town planning scheme for a very long time that we have incrementally amended over the years, but I'm glad to say a lot of work went into it, I think probably at least 5 years to get to the point where we have a new town planning scheme. And for those who think 5 years is a terribly long time, that's about the average time it takes every local government to get a new planning scheme through the WA Planning Commission and the Minister for Planning. So it's a long journey, and naturally we celebrate when it's finally done. Together with the local planning strategy that was introduced as a legal requirement for local governments several years ago, which we adopted in 2022, we now have completed the two most important statutory planning framework documents to guide our future development in the town. Flowing from them, the important work of having precinct planning is now underway under this new umbrella. Of course, it was a year for building community, and a big year of community events anchored by the annual Vic Park Summer Street Party and the Business Awards Gala, which moved into their 6th year, and a range of diverse, accessible and inclusive events in between both of those has created more opportunities for our residents and visitors alike to connect, to celebrate and to thrive. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those passionate members of our community who dedicate their time by participating in and volunteering for our advisory and working groups to advise and guide Council in its decision making. This includes the Mindera Advisory Group, Access and Inclusion Advisory Group, Urban Forest Strategy Implementation Working Group, Business Advisory Group, Macmillan Precinct Working Group, Lathlane Park Advisory Group, Hockey Working Group, and the 2 hard-working independent committee members of our Audit and Risk Committee. All of their contributions to our work on Council and to our community at large are invaluable, and we sincerely thank all those people for their efforts. On behalf of our Council, for the year ended 30 June 2024, I would like to thank the town's former Chief Executive Officer, Mr Anthony Valletta, his executive management team and every town employee for their hard work during that year and for not losing sight of the purpose for which we're here, which is to deliver good outcomes for our community. We continue to build a more resilient organisation and a stronger and more sustainable community together. I do wish to personally thank my council colleagues, both past and present, during the financial year ended 30 June 2024 for their commitment, enthusiasm and support in providing effective representation for our community and good governance for the town. Thank you. So I would now like to invite our current CEO, Mr Carl Askew, to provide a report on behalf of the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with pleasure that I present the 2023-24 financial year annual report and the CEO's report, and can I also acknowledge Anthony Valletta, who obviously led the team during that period as well, and thank him for his contribution. 2023-24, ladies and gentlemen, was a significant year for the town, a significant number of achievements and progress, a number of projects that you will see in that report completed, a number of new projects commenced, both in planning stages and in design stages, and pleasing to see that those designs are now reflected in very much active projects, especially at Edmillan and McCallum Park. We have continued to have a focus very much on protecting and preserving our natural environment, and you will see that come through in the report. A number of significant partnerships, in particular working with the state government during 23-24, and also with Burswood Park Board and also with Black Oak, to name but a few, significant arrangements and partnerships. So really pleasing to see that at work. Our urban forest strategy continues to win awards and recognition, and that is fantastic to see as we continue on a number of those major objectives for the town. Waste management, we continue to make good strides in. There is a lot of work to do in the waste space, and we have been particularly active in education. And again, going forward, you will see lots more happening in that space in the coming 12 months. We have, as you will have witnessed and seen, started enhancing a lot of our public open spaces, a number of facility upgrades, both to our active reserves as well as our passive reserves. That work will continue, and that is really pleasing to see. We have continued to engage well with our community, and will continue to prioritise that as part of the work we do moving forward. We have also, as you will have seen, a very busy capital works program, and that has continued on through this year as well. And it is great to see us continue to deliver on all of those commitments and reinforce what's in Council's current strategic plan and business plan. From my perspective, can I thank Council for their leadership? Can I thank the dedicated staff for their hard work day in, day out. And can I thank you, the community, for your input and contribution into making all of those projects successful. It is really appreciated. It is really great to see, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr CEO. I'll now call on the town's Chief Financial Officer, Mr Duncan Old, to give a report with regards to the financial statements and the town's auditor's report for FY24.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to present the audited financial statements as included in the annual report for the year end 30 June 2024. The financial statements and supporting notes contained within the annual report are in accordance with the relevant Australian accounting standards, the Local Government Act 1995 and associated regulations to present fairly the position of the town of Victoria Park. As a brief summary of the financial statements, the following observations are made. Rates revenue of $48.8 million was levied across 18,164 rateable assessments. Overall loan principal owing reduced by $3.1 million from $12.4 million to $9.4 million. A large proportion of this debt relates to the underground power projects. The only class of asset that underwent a revaluation this year was artworks, and the audit opinion was issued on the 11th of December 2024. The financial statements as presented were independently audited by the Office of the Auditor General, a state government agency, and in their opinion, the annual financial report is based on proper accounts and records, presents fairly in all material respects the results of the operations of the town for the year end 30 June 2024 and its financial position at the end of that period, and in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995 and to the extent that they are not inconsistent with the Act, the Australian accounting standards. As per the auditor's report, attention is drawn to note 30 in the financial report, which states that the amounts reported in the previously issued 30 June 2023 financial report have been restated and disclosed as comparatives in this financial report. The auditor's opinion is not modified in respect of this matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Old. We will now see a brief video, which are highlights from the annual report, which have been put together by the town's communications team to feature what we achieved in that particular year. Thank you. Now, it is a requirement under local government legislation that the annual report is presented to the annual meeting of electors to be received by them. The annual report for 2023-2024 has already been adopted by our council. That was done on the 4th of February this year. But it is now the case that I wish to seek a mover for a motion to receive the 2023-2024 annual report, which contains the audited financial statements and auditor's report for the town of Victoria Park. Could I seek a mover for that, please? Thank you. Gentleman at the front, so that's Dave Knight. Thank you. So moved Dave Knight. Can I seek a seconder, please? Is there a seconder? Seconded Paul Annesbury. Thank you. All right. Mr. Knight, do you want to speak to the motion? No, I have nothing. No? All right. Thank you. Mr. Annesbury, I think as I read out with the rules, I'm going to first call and see if there's any dissent, at which point I'd come back to you if there was. Is there dissent for receiving the annual report? At this point, Mr. Maxwell, we've got questions that are on the agenda, but they come after this item. Sorry? I'm just going by the agenda that's been given to me. I've already indicated that there's a maximum of 4 questions per person. So do you have some questions related to the annual report that you want to bring forward now? All right, I'll do that. Please come forward. For those who've not attended a meeting before, when you come forward to the lectern, you need to press the button, which will switch it on. You'll see the red light will come on. Please state your name and your suburb, which is a requirement under our meeting procedures local law. And if you are someone who wishes to speak, you do, as I said at the outset, need to be an elector in the district. So, Mr. Maxwell, please state your name and suburb. Thank you.
Vince Maxwell from Victoria Park. In the accounts approved last year, the income from the disposal of assets for 22-23 was listed as 153,826.
What page are you reading from, Mr. Maxwell?
Page 60. However, in today's document, this figure has been revised to 1.29 million, which is an increase of 1.1 million. This change has been made 20 months after the accounts were closed, but there's no explanation provided. Can you enlighten us to why no explanation has been provided for such a significant adjustment?
All right, so when you said you were reading from page 60, you're talking about the different amounts in the 2 columns from the 2023 restated actual. Is that right? Is that where you're reading from? I just want to know so I can direct the CFO to that.
So about halfway down under investing activities.
Yes, I
proceeds
see that.
From disposal of assets in the right-hand column, 2023, the amount shown there is $1,292,033. In the accounts that were adopted or accepted by the electors last year, that amount was $153,826.
All right, I have to refer that question over to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Old.
Mayor, just for clarification, is the reference to the previous report adopted last year? Is that what the comparative is? I just need clarification.
Mr. Maxwell, that's what I understood you to say. It's from last year's adopted financials at the annual meeting of electors. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So the amount from that report has been increased by 1.1 million, and there's no note there to suggest what that's for.
All right, thank you, Mr. Old. Is that one you're able to answer tonight? Does that need to be taken on notice?
I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have that report to hand.
All right, okay, we'll take that question on notice. Next question.
In the previous years, the auditor's findings have been made available to the public, as is required by the Local Government Act. Can you explain why this year the 19 pages of the auditor's findings are being withheld from electors?
Direct that question to Mr. Old.
Through you, Mayor, I understand that previously those management letters were not actually released to the public. I was unable to find that on the town's website. The reason for withholding that is under the Local Government Act section 5.232F. There's confidentiality clauses, and they relate to some detailed operations of the town.
Your third question, Mr. Maxwell?
I can assure the CFO they were released last year. I can show you a copy of it
Your
if you want.
third question, Mr Maxwell, please.
So as electors, we are being asked to accept the annual report today, but the auditor's findings, which are a crucial part of this process, have not been made public. Would you, Mayor, accept the annual report without first reviewing the auditor's report?
Mr Maxwell, I've reviewed the auditor's report and I've been a part of the council that voted to adopt the annual report, so I've done my part in that regard. Do you have a fourth question?
You're expecting us to do it without seeing that?
Mr Maxwell, it's been explained to you why the documents, the particular one that you're referring to, the audit findings, that is regularly not disclosed due to the Local Government Act. So it's not an opportunity for debate in questions, it's just questions followed by answers. So I've given you mine, you've heard from Mr Old. Do you have a final question?
I want to know if there's nothing wrong in the auditor's findings, why would the council hide them from electors? And I know you're not going to answer it. So.
Well, I have answered your question, Mr Maxwell. The fact that you don't like my answer is a different matter altogether, but thank you for your questions. Is there anyone else who has questions about the annual report? No, in that case, I'm going to go back and ask formally, is there any dissent to the receipt of the annual electors? So there is, Mr Maxwell. All right, so on that basis, Mr Annesbury, as the seconder for this particular item, did you wish to be heard? No? Thank you. Mr Maxwell, do you want to speak to the item? You've got 3 minutes to speak to it.
Thank you. I think it's pretty obvious. The whole reason we're having this meeting tonight and why there's so much regulation around it is because the electors are expected to accept the annual report. And you've provided this report this year without providing the auditor's findings. 19 pages of documents are hidden from us. They were provided previously, as is required under the Act, and you're expecting us this year to just blindly go along and accept the report without seeing what the auditor actually said. So I won't be voting for it.
Thanks, Mr Maxwell. Mr Knight, as the mover of the motion, do you wish to be heard in reply?
Question?
Yes, please come forward to state your name and your suburb.
Yeah, Dave Knight, Eastwick Park. If the electors don't accept the report, what happens then?
Direct that question to the Manager of Governance and Strategy, Ms Tucker.
Thank you for the question. If the electors do not accept the annual report this evening, that will get reported through to the next council meeting, or if not available to that council meeting, one following that, and it will be reported to council.
Thank you. So that's just a statutory requirement, Mr Knight, that it goes forward like all of the other motions that might come forward tonight, go forward to the next council meeting for consideration, noting that it's up to electors how they choose to vote on any motion that's put forward tonight. So on that basis, did you wish to close debate or say anything more in that regard? No? All right, thank you. So by a show of hands, I'm first going to call for all those who wish to vote in favour of receiving the annual report. Please raise your hand now and keep it raised until we can have time for our counters to count. Thank you. All right, thank you. So we have 25 in favour, those against? That's 5 against. Declare that carried, thank you. Thank you for that. So we'll now move to item 5 on the agenda, which is general business. So we have general business for questions. Again, the maximum is 4 questions per person. I do already have 2 people who have listed down that they would like to ask some questions. That doesn't mean that anybody else who's in the audience who has questions they'd like to ask can't do so. These just happen to be people who spoke to our staff and indicated they had some questions that they would like to ask. So I'm going to go to those persons first and invite them to come forward, and then I'll go back and throw it open to anybody else. So first on the list, Vince Maxwell, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got one question. The auditor's 3-page cover letter that you did publish states that, in his words, in connection with my audit of the financial report, my responsibility is to read the other information and in doing so consider whether that other information is materially inconsistent with the financial report or my knowledge obtained in the audit or otherwise appears to be materially misstated. And he goes on to write that I did not receive the other information prior to the date of this auditor's report. In other words, the town did not provide the auditor with all of the material that he said he was responsible to check. So why is the town withholding this information from the auditor?
Direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer.
Mayor, we've provided every bit of single information the auditor has asked. They've sat with my office for weeks on end. They've conducted interviews with myself, with the executive. They conducted interviews and observed procedures for a myriad of items. So if the auditor has requested information, we provided it, if possible, within 1 business day.
Well, I'll just refer you to the auditor's report in your
Mr.
document.
Maxwell, you've read out your part. You've heard from the Chief Financial Officer. Do you have enough? Mr. Maxwell, that is an adverse reflection against Mr. Maxwell, it's an adverse reflection against a town staff member, and I ask you to withdraw it. If you're not going to withdraw it, then you can return to your seat, which you've done now. So you can return to your seat and stay there. Thank you. Next person on the list for asking questions, Paul Schipper. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb. Thank you.
I'm Paul Skipper. I live at 50A Marshamley Street, Carlisle. A question is regarding verge watering on Fletcher Park. I live on Marshamley Street, of course, as I've said, and the watering has been stopped for the last week and a half, fortnight. Everything's starting to die well and truly. I'd just like to ask why and get an answer, because the times I've rung, which would be probably 8 or 9 times over a number of years, when the water gets changed, etc., and everything starts to dry out, we're told that we're beyond our water limits and therefore we've got to turn off the verge watering. So that means 2 lots of widths of watering start to die in that period. I'd just like to see the area maintained with a certain amount of water, like other verges around our wonderful park and area in which I've lived for 13 years. Appreciate the good work that's been done, particularly the underground power. And so that's the first question. And
so I'm going to do the questions, Mr. Skipper, one by one, because they may require answers from different town staff.
Thank you.
And I'd like to see that we get you answers to your questions. Just to clarify, when you talk about the verge watering that hasn't been on for 2 weeks, is that only on one verge at Fletcher Park, or is it your observation it's on all of the 4 verges
it's
of
the verge right around the perimeter,
Yes.
the curb perimeter of Marshamley Street, Western Street, and the 2 streets in between that run either end.
Right, thank you. I'm going to direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Skipper, for your time earlier as well, explaining the question. I don't have an answer for you at the moment, but I will find out. It is true that we do sometimes towards the end of summer have to review our water allocation, and there are sometimes areas that do have less water than they're used to receiving. I'm not sure if that is the case here, but I will check and come back to you.
So on that basis, we're going to take that question for you, Mr. Skipper, on notice formally. So there will be a written response to you, and it will go in the agenda for the next council meeting. So that will follow up with some detail precisely about what has occurred here.
Right. Can I just
Yep, you can ask further questions, yes.
The allocation of water for the oval is number 1 consideration, but can we have, say, 5% of the allocation given to verge watering, like other verges appear to always have.
I'll direct that question to Ms Adams. So on the assumption that this is a water allocation issue, is it possible to take a percentage of the allocation of water for Fletcher Park to ensure it goes only to the verge area?
Formally, Mayor, I'll take it on notice. I did want to just explain, though, that all verges that we see are sometimes maintained by residents or businesses, so it's not always by the town and the town's water allocation. But as for whether water allocation can be changed in terms of the percentage, I'll take it on notice.
Sorry, just to clarify, Ms Adams, I understand Mr Skipper is referring to the verge of Fletcher Park, not the verges of the residents on Marshamley or the other streets, but actually the verge of the park itself before the playing surfaces start. Is that right, Mr Skipper?
Yeah, exactly,
That part
yes.
of the verge.
Yep.
Sorry, Mayor, yes, I did understand that. I was just referencing when you look through the town, there are verges that are much greener and maintained to be green, but those are sometimes looked after by residents.
Well, the ones up Mint Street are certainly green. They're almost greener than the Fletcher Park Oval.
Did you have another question, Mr Skipper?
Just one other question. I guess it's just to some extent in the statement. A week and a half ago.
Sorry, Mr Skipper, we do have a section for statements. I understand. I'm trying to follow the rules that I've set.
All right,
if you do want to turn it into a question, you're welcome to do so because you haven't used your 4-question allocation as yet.
No, that's fine.
All right,
That's fine.
thank you.
very much.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Now, is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or up to 4 questions? Anyone? No? Oh, yes. Gentlemen, please come forward and please state your name and your suburb.
Hello. Sorry, Tim Young, East Victoria Park.
Yep, when you're ready.
Thank you. Looking at the strategic outcomes for the environment in the report, which are all very impressive and I love what I'm seeing so far, but under EN5 for the enhancing and enabling livability through planning and urban design and development, there's no mention of the plan to remove or to attempt to remove reliance on gas from council buildings. Is there any plan now or in the future to remove reliance on gas from council buildings?
Going to direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Through the chair, not at the moment.
Noting though, Mr Young, we do have a climate emergency plan which Council adopted in 2021, and I think if my calculations are not wrong, we should be as a council probably reviewing that climate emergency plan pretty soon, and I've no doubt that will give us the opportunity to deepen those discussions around that issue, to the extent that there is any level of specific gas use in our town buildings. So I do understand that that is something that is coming up, like review of the climate emergency plan, which is where we've put things like the transition of the light fleet, electrification of all of our services and the like. So hopefully that assists.
Thank you. And in pursuant to that, is there any plan to put forward any kind of programs to allow members within the community to degas their premises, given that that is quite an economic imposition required, especially the disconnection costs required by ATCO?
To direct that question to Ms Adams.
Through the chair, in terms of any current plans, I'm not aware of any. As for the future, that would be dependent on perhaps other factors that come to play, like during the climate emergency plan review.
And I would probably say the climate emergency plan does have a focus on what we do with town facilities, but also how we can encourage our community to basically reduce their reliance on fossil fuels across a range of measures. But those types of plans are quite iterative in the sense of we started on that journey and we've learned a lot more since we adopted that plan in 2021. So I would expect to see more growth in that space of what we're doing to aid the community in the review that we're going to do of that plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you. You're welcome. Is there anyone else who has any questions they would like to ask? No. There being no other questions, we'll move then on to 5.2, which is statements. So there is a maximum. Sorry, Mr. Gleeson, did I miss you? Sorry, apologise. No, sorry, it isn't. There were only two names, Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Skipper. So apologise about that. Please come forward. You already know the drill, Mr. Gleeson, so you know how this goes.
I do.
Thank you.
No, I've always been taught to speak standing. Look, first of all, I'd like to welcome our new CEO and like to get the meeting a bit more into the future. And I'd like to thank the council for their note of the loss of my partner. It's very kind of you. Anyway, I don't hope that doesn't take up any of my time. The question I want to really ask is how much Woolworths have paid on the vacant land that they own now. We've got a different rate for vacancy of land than we have had before. That's been changed to vacant land is going to be rated a bit dearer. How much has Woolworths paid us so far?
All right, I'm going to direct that
vacant
question. Yeah, I'm going to direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer. Woolworths has paid the full purchase price for the land that we sold to them, but if you're talking about what they pay by way of rates, I am of the view that generally speaking we don't announce in public meetings what an individual ratepayer will pay by way of their rates. My understanding is that's usually a matter of privacy for them. But I'll ask Mr. Old, am I right about that, or is there anything that we're able to provide in this regard in a public meeting setting? Mr. Old.
Through you, Mayor, you're correct in that the proceeds have been received, and I think that is in this financial year actually. As for what rates an individual ratepayer pays, we don't usually disclose that publicly.
So on that basis, Mr. Gleeson, we did get our money. We've been getting interest on that money, but we certainly aren't in a position in a public meeting, nor would we do it in a private meeting, to disclose to one ratepayer or even a member of the public what another ratepayer pays by way of rates. That's their private information.
Well, as it's a privacy, overall, are still vacant land being charged more.
So, Mr. Old, is it, well,
individuals, doesn't
yes,
matter.
It is the case that we have a specific rating category for vacant land, and for as long as Woolworths maintains that land as vacant land, when the time comes for rating, I would expect they would be rated as vacant land until they have commenced their development. That be right, Mr. Old?
Correct, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. So that is correct. Did you have another question, Mr. Gleeson?
Oh, yes, I'd just like to ask that our council laws have been voted in for us, and I'd like to ask them, when you make decisions in the future, will you please get in touch with the people that are paying the wages here and give us more information on the expenditure, please.
All right, I can take that on behalf of councillors. We'll
Thank
look
you.
into that for you, Mr. Gleeson, for sure. Did you have another question? Because you've got one more question left in your quota.
Yes, well, it's a question that we used to sponsor the bike race through Victoria Park, and we used to sponsor a race around the bridges. As one of the sponsors, I can't believe we don't do anything like that anymore.
So, Mr. Gleeson, we do sponsorship of events, but the way our sponsorship works now is that we actually call for expressions of interest from the public market as to people who've got an event that they're seeking sponsorship for. They put in a proposal within a time period that's assessed by an independent panel that the town sets up, and recommendations for which sponsorship should be awarded then comes to council in a report. So from any one year to the next, we might get anything from, if I think about some of the things we've had before, a Christmas concert, a Lego exhibition, an art exhibition. There have been running races. We've been requested by different clubs and organisations to sponsor their events.
Thank you, Lady Mayor.
But Yeah, sometimes it's one, sometimes it's not the same one from year to year. Does that assist?
Have I got
with you?
another question or not?
Well, you might be pushing the friendship a little bit, Mr. Gleeson, but since it's been a while since you came to see us, and I know things have been
look,
tough
I'm
lately.
sorry I've been
have you
away
got-
for so long.
Have
I've
you
been a
got
bit
one
crook.
last question? Because I want to
Yeah.
let other people in the audience
Look,
have
the
an
only
opportunity.
reason is why we've got so many flags out there, really. It's like the United Nations. Thank you.
I'll just
That can
take.
be
I'll,
answered,
I'll
maybe.
take. I'll take that as a comment, Mr. Gleeson. But we did add to the flag poles. Thanks in large part to your advocacy. And once we did, that meant we got other flags that we needed to display by law, and we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who has any questions that they would like to ask? No, no other questions. In that case, we'll close question time. We'll move to 5.2, which is statements. So again, it's 2 minutes for statements. Now, we have a person who's pre-registered to make a statement, and then I'll go and call if there's anyone else who would like to make a statement. So first person is Joe Bryant. If you could please come forward and state your name and your suburb. Thank you, in accordance with our meeting procedures local law.
Thank you. My name is Joe Bryant and I come from Burswood. And I'd like to talk on this motorplex. I'm not going to talk about the idea of a racetrack. It's beyond me. I'm not interested. But I do want to make a statement about why it may be knocked back. And the reason it might be knocked back is environmental. And if that is the case, then it is wrong. It is not, as quoted, a beautiful public open space or a cherished sanctuary of abundant wildlife and mature trees. It certainly isn't that either. It's an open space that 20 years ago was a rubbish tip and nothing much has happened to it for 20 years other than a suggested Martian plan. I walk across it quite often and I hardly ever see anybody else walking it. On Saturday I actually walked a track of a motorplex and I can assure you that the centre of that land is vacant, there's nothing on it. If there's a tree, it will be one, and that is where the buildings are going to go. Secondly, the track itself surrounds most of the native areas, and I can assure you there's no abundant wildlife. In one creek, there are a few black duck, a few wood duck, a few coots, a few moorhens, and very little else. And that's even outside that. And if they want to shove off, they can go to the pond next door, as no doubt the western native swamp hen would. The other areas where animals might exist is the bushes. And what do you have? A few southern brown bandicoot who wouldn't give a damn, and the rather rare and shy buff-banded rail. And he hides in the bushes also. And the passerines fly in and fly out. But there's hardly anything there.
Mr. Bryant, that actually is your 2 minutes there.
Okay, well, noise might be a problem, but beyond that, there's nothing.
All right, thank you. We have heard your statement. Appreciate you coming along to share that with us. Now, I don't have anybody else's name listed down for making statements. Is there anyone else who would like to make a statement? So I'll go with the lady here with the black, and then the lady in the other side with black and green. So I think Ms. Jacoby, please come forward.
Lenny Jacoby, I live in Eastwick Park. It's very close to my face, sorry. My statement just relates around parking around Vic Park. The needs have changed over the past 14 years that I've lived here. And I have to admit, I love living close to the amenities, and then I love that lots of people outside of Vic Park come and visit us. My statement is on behalf of people that live on the side streets, including all of my neighbours that live between Albany Highway and Berwick Street. We have a lot of issues accessing our own residence when it's busy, particularly around Christmas time. And at present, my house is deemed too far from the strip to be impacted, all of 350 metres away. Moving forward, I just want to say the town needs to consider the vibrancy of Vic Park and its impact on its local residents. We don't want to change or discourage people from coming here. In fact, we welcome them. And in future planning, the town needs to reconsider residential parking requirements to ensure safe roads and local residents. And I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that the challenges and the good work that the local rangers do in relation to the parking situation around town. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms Jacoby. Yes, thank you. Just please state your name and your suburb. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Briony Witten and I live in East Park. I also wanted to thank the council and the town of Vic Park for its ongoing commitment to diversity and inclusion, including your beautiful new reconciliation action plan and your Pride contributions and Pride Vic Park. I live up the top end of East Vic Park, and I have never been so excited in my life to read a government announcement as I was when I saw the announcement for the Boorloo Bridge. That is a beautiful piece of infrastructure and I'm so excited that we have it. I would like to comment that I wish that it was a little bit easier to get around Vic Park on bikes. And I would like to see more protected bike lanes to get us from that sort of East Vic Park, Bentley, and down to these incredible facilities that we've got at the bottom end of Victoria Park. Now that we have this incredible bridge and the activations that brings to that end of town, I would also encourage the council to work with the state government to rehabilitate our access to the river. It is a beautiful place and I wish that it was more accessible, it was more swimmable, and other than, it's just, I just wish it was easier to get in there. Yeah, that's mostly it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms Witten. Appreciate you coming along tonight. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a statement? Mr Gleeson, please come forward.
Yeah, my statement is to councillors to absolutely make sure that when our engineer's at work, that he has a look at what we're doing to our suburb. At the moment, we've spent over $1 million on a roundabout, which absolutely floored me outside the council yard. And we only got a few $1 million off Woolworths for a block of land that's worth who knows what. And we must pull this into gear. We've got to stop narrowing our roads, putting lumps and bumps in them, putting roundabouts everywhere. Whether you know it or not, the car is here to stay. If you want to sell your cars and ride a bike, great. If you don't, stop trying to tell us we need parking, we need this, we need... Please work for us, councillors. It's very important. That's why we employed you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Gleeson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Gleeson. I appreciate your comments, but I do note that you referred to our engineers as he's, and I would like to point out our Chief Operations Officer is an engineer and she is a she. So we have she and he who work in engineering, but thanks for your statement, Mr Gleeson. Thank you. Mr Zammit, you want to come up and make a statement? Yes, please, come forward. Thanks, Mr Gleeson.
The only reason I asked the question is the amount of money that was spent on a roundabout for what we got for that land. That's.
I know, I understand your point, Mr Gleeson, about the roundabout near the depot. You have perfectly well raised that with us before, so we do understand.
Excuse me, turn my back.
No, that's all right. Just state your name and your suburb, Mr Zammit. You're pretty familiar with how we do things.
Good evening, everybody. Sam Zammit. I'd just like to bring to your attention that the Swansea Street Markets has just been sold for $9.4 million. I offered it to the town, if you remember, Lady Mayor, for around about $5 million. That's 3 years later, it sold for $9.4 million. I'm not crying about the money that the town lost for not purchasing it, because I believe that would have been a great asset. But what worries me is that the person or the company that bought it now is proposing to put storage units there. And I couldn't think of anything worse for the town. We don't need storage units. We've got two. One near La Plaza Bentley Shopping Centre and one down on the corner of, I think it's Leach and Washpur Road. I'm appealing to all you councillors tonight, and you especially, Mayor, that we oppose this proposal to build it. Now, I don't know what strength local government has got in these matters, whether we have the right to object to that sort of, I mean, it's 5 minutes away from this beautiful new train system that's been given to us, 2 minutes away from Circle Route bus and other buses. I'd just like to leave you with this thought that I think we should fight this thumb and nail.
Thanks, Mr. Zammit. I appreciate you sharing that information with us. So, thank you. We'll look into that. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a statement tonight? No, not seeing anybody else who wishes to make a statement. So, on that basis, we'll close public statement time. And now come to 5.3 on the agenda, which is motions. Now, I have two motions that have been pre-registered, so I'm going to deal with those first and invite those persons wishing to move those motions to come forward first, and then I will call it open to the floor if there are any other motions. So if I could invite Jade So to please come forward and present your motions. We'll do them one at a time. And so if I could have you, because I have the wording for your motion here, but if I could have you just read your motion out, and because you pre-registered them, we'll put them up on the big screen, I think. Is that right? Minute Secretary can do that. So that's the first one, which means everyone in the audience can read it, as can elected members. But if you'd like to take a seat and just formally read out your motion, then I will call for a seconder and then we'll get you to speak to your motion. Okay?
Great, thanks. So Jade So from Victoria Park. My first motion is for the council to seek ways to make it safer for riders travelling along Hordern Street, and that's one of our main streets connecting Vic Park to our new beautiful bridge, as well as the Perth CBD.
All right, so I'll seek a seconder, please, for this particular motion. Seconded, Ms. Witten. Thank you. All right, Ms. So, if you'd like to speak now to your motion, you've got 3 minutes to speak to your motion in total, if you need it.
Thank you. I hope it's okay for audience participation. So I'd love to see a show of hands if you ride a bike or an e-rideable. Councillors and electors, amazing. Okay, and keep your hands up. For those who have your hands down, I'd love to know, raise your hands if you know someone who rides a bike or an e-rideable. Friend, family, or colleague. Amazing, that's nearly everybody in the room. That's really great to see. So firstly, as you can already tell, my first motion is in relation to road safety. A few points here. So since COVID and the popularity of e-ridables, we know that there are more cyclists and riders on the road. The new bridge is also likely to increase the number of people riding in the area, which I have seen every single day I travel to the bridge. And this is all great because we know the benefits of riding for the environment as well as the community's physical and mental health. We also know that our roads today are designed more for cars in mind, and that naturally increases the risk of accidents for our riders on the road. So again, just to reiterate my first motion, it's not on the board. It's for the town of Vic Park to seek ways to make it safer for riders travelling along Hordern Street. Now, you might think, how bad is it if we don't do anything about this? And I have a personal story to share. 2 years ago, my husband, who's in the audience, he was hit by a car at a roundabout along Hordern Street. I have a map for anyone who would like to see it. So it's the first roundabout that's closest to the tunnel that leads towards the bridge. He had an accident there, and a year later, a man riding an e-scooter was hit by a car and died at the very same roundabout. So, yeah, I'll leave that there. And the other thing that I would like to say about this motion is that this could be anyone you know personally, and that's nearly everybody in the room. And when we kiss them goodbye, we don't expect to not see them again later that day. So I will also leave and stress that this motion is for the town of Vic Park to consider the best measures and solutions, whether that be speed humps or reducing the speed limits, but that will be for them to decide. And what this motion aims to achieve is for them to at least look into it and implement what's best, because they are the experts in this area as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. So. I'm going to ask, in accordance with the rules that I read out, is there any dissent to this motion? Mr. Gleeson, you're in dissent, is that right? All right, do you want to speak against the motion? In that case, if I can invite you to please come up, I'll invite Ms. So to return to her seat. Noting, Ms. So, you'll have a right of reply at the end. Please come forward, Mr. Gleeson.
Everyone wants to ride a push bike, including myself. But I've got to tell you people, if you've got a push bike and you want to ride it and make it almost compulsory, sell your cars today and see how you go when you want to go and visit your grandmother or somebody in Gelton or Kalgoorlie. You've got to ride your bike. But if you've got a car and you're voting for this motion, sell your car or don't. Now, I'd like you to put your hands up if you own a car and you want the push bikes. Please. Do you get it? You want to have your car and your bike as well. Yes. Thank you, Lady Me.
Thanks, Mr. Gleeson. I think you might have just made the case for Ms. So. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? No, in that case, Ms. So, I'm going to invite you, if you'd like to exercise your right of reply, you have up to 2 minutes to deal with the argument you just heard.
Okay, thanks for the question and statement. I think, yes, if any, my point was to show that roads were designed with cars in mind, but we do need to think about how might we consider cyclists and also pedestrians as well. So we do have footpaths available, but how do we have, make sure that the road is designed for both cars and cyclists, and you have your more vulnerable road users like pedestrians? How might we think about that in the way we design our roads?
All right, thanks, Ms. So. So I'm going to put this motion now to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand, and please keep your hand up if you can until our counters have completed counting. Ms. So, would you like to be included in the vote? Just saying.
Thanks for reminding me.
30? All right, so we have 30 who are for it. And please raise your hand if you're against the motion. Oh, we didn't persuade you, Mr. Gleeson. So 1 against, that was easy to count. Declare that carried. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. So. If you'd now like to move on to your second motion that you've pre-registered with us, thank you.
Thanks. So my second motion is a little more specific. I'll just read it out first. It's to extend the current no parking zone at the Horden Street and Amar Street intersection until past the driveway of the first house. So just to go into this for a bit more detail. So towards Horden Street, where it's close to the...
Sorry, Ms. So, before you go into detail on it, I want to get the motion on the floor, and as said at the outset, I'll seek a seconder and then you can elaborate.
Yep.
But I did note that you just actually put some additional words into the motion you pre-registered with us, which might be important for the staff to know and understand. So I think perhaps those extra words should go in your motion, because you said the no parking zone was to be extended at the Horden Street and Amar Street intersection till past, you said, the first house?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, okay. When you say past the first house, do you have any idea of either the number or which direction you're referring past the first house?
So the first house would be 7 Amar Street. Victoria Park.
Okay, so we'll put 7 Armagh because that will help the town staff focus when they consider reporting to us on this motion. And otherwise, the words will be as they appear up on the screen. So the minutes secretary can work on adding those words in, but if you're happy that they're a part of your motion, that's what we'll consider your motion to be. We'll do that. We can work on that separately. Are you content that that's what your motion will be? Thank you.
Yep.
I'll now call, is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded, Ms Whitten, thank you. So, Ms So, please feel free now to commence speaking to your motion.
Thanks. So, as I said, along Horden Street towards the bridge, there is an oddly shaped intersection that looks a bit like a butterfly. It's not a normal intersection for a few reasons, because it isn't straight and there are houses and buildings located very close to it. So what this means is that when you're on Horden Street traveling towards the bridge, towards the tunnel, it means that you aren't able to see who's coming towards you, whether that be riders or cars, until you're close to the center and until it is too late. And so in relation to why this motion is so specific on extending this no parking zone, it's for a few reasons. For those, again, traveling on Horden Street going towards the bridge, the parked cars blocks their view of oncoming traffic. Secondly, the street also narrows close to the intersection, and this means that there isn't enough space for two. And therefore, when we have riders and cyclists in the mix, it means that it is much more dangerous for them if an accident were to occur. Now, what is the cost of this proposal? It would be removing 3 to 4 cars worth of parking space. And in terms of the benefit, it would hopefully make it safer for everyone using this intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms So. So I'm going to formally ask, as per the rules I set out at the beginning, is there any dissent to this motion?
I'm sorry, Mayor Vernon, I think there might need to be a correction to the motion.
All right, in what regard?
I do apologise. I've just been looking at a map. I'm wondering if you mean 7 Horden Street rather than 7 Armagh Street.
On Google Maps, it was 7 Armagh Street, although it's located on Horden Street. But it's the corner house.
The corner house is 14 Armagh Street.
All right, well, at the end of the day, Deputy Mayor Hythe, this is Ms So's motion, so you've brought it to her attention. But look, at the end of the day, perhaps if it said the first house, -7 Armagh, or the corner house, that probably ought to cover it, no matter what its house number is. So I think we can successfully add that in if you're happy for that to be the case, Ms So. Ms Whitten, as the seconder, are you happy for those extra words to go in to add or the corner house? Thank you. All right, nobody had indicated they had any dissent, so I'm now going to put it to the vote. All those in favour of this motion, please raise your hand and keep them up long enough for us to count the vote. So 27 in favour. Is there anyone against? No, there being nobody against, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Ms So, for your work on that. Very much appreciate you bringing those motions to us about those two important matters. So, is there anyone else who wishes to move a motion at tonight's meeting? Ms Lissandro, please come forward.
Luana Alessandro, Lathlane. My first motion is that the Town of Victoria Park investigate the introduction and implementation of electronic online petitions to allow ratepayers to create and lodge petitions via an online petitions portal on the town's website. I have sent this through about 45 minutes ago.
All right, so we'll just pause then for a moment. Do you know which email address you used to send it through to, by any chance?
Governance vicpark.wa.gov.au.
All right, thank you. If it went to the governance, we've obviously been going for that period of time, so we'll just give the Minutes Secretary a moment to check with governance that we've received that, because that will be very helpful for being able to copy and put it up quickly. All right, so we have got those, and I think we're just loading up your first one. So hopefully that will be up in a moment. But I think most people heard that your motion is about investigating the introduction and implementation of electronic online petitions for the benefit of ratepayers and those who want to lodge one. So can I seek a seconder for this motion, please? Seconded, Ms. Potter. Thank you. Ms. Lysandro, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, very briefly. For many years, I think a lot of ratepayers would like to have lodged electronic petitions to the town. I do note that the City of Canning and also the City of Stirling provide the ability for their ratepayers to be able to lodge electronic petitions. I just think this would be an added benefit for our ratepayers to be able to highlight issues that of concern to them electronically, and then to seek feedback from their fellow residents and ratepayers. So, and it's in addition, it's not exclusive to just having online petition, but also just as addition to possibly people who still may want to door knock for petitions. So I just think it would be an added benefit. I hope that people support this in the gallery.
Thanks, Ms. Lysandro. The Manager of Governance has just pointed out to me something that I will share with you. Don't have any difficulty with you proceeding with your motion. However, the town's current meeting procedures, Local Law 2019, which is delegated legislation, currently prevents online petitions. At the moment, we are waiting for the Department of Local Government to issue the Model Standard Meeting Procedures Local Law, which the government indicated would be introduced as part of the Tranche 2 reforms to the Local Government Act that were adopted by Parliament roughly around September of 2024. We're still waiting for the regulations to be made that will give all local governments the one standard set of meeting procedures local law, and we would expect that that issue about petitions will be covered in it. Until that time, as you'd probably recall yourself, takes roughly about 6 months to change a local law. So for us to actually do anything with e-petitions, we'd have to amend our local law before we could enact that. And that may impact upon any work the town might decide to do or not do in relation to this motion. But it's up to you. If you want to proceed with it, I'm happy to receive it. It's been seconded, so it's up to you. But I'm just saying at the moment, there's actually a real legislative hurdle that we can't get over without either amending the local law or waiting until the new model local laws come up for adoption to see any change in this space.
I'm happy for the motion to be proceeded with.
Yep, that's fair enough. All right. That's not a problem. So I'll formally ask, is there any dissent to this motion? Yes, so you're in dissent. Would you like to come forward and speak to it? Noting you don't have to, but I want to give you that opportunity because that is part of the rules. If you just state your name and your suburb, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Stephanie Costa, Carlisle. My concern would be in the wording of the above motion, in that there is a significant portion of Victoria Park and its surroundings who are renters, and the inclusion of ratepayers as a key stakeholder excludes those people from having input into these decisions.
All right, so that's probably a part where I'll invite Ms. Lysandro.
I'm happy to amend.
She'd like to seek to amend. So how would you like to change the words, Ms. Lysandro? Would you like to make it
residents and ratepayers?
Residents and ratepayers. All right. So it will be to allow ratepayers and residents. So that covers everyone. I think we can do that easily. So Ms. Potter, you seconded this. Are you happy with that amendment? Yes, thank you. All right, so that's where we're at. So I'll now again ask, is there any dissent? No, in that case, we do need to put it to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised until we can count the votes. All right, so 26 in favour. All those against, please raise your hand. There being 0 votes against, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Ms Lysandro, you have another motion?
Yes, thank you. That the town of Victoria Park investigate the reinstating of a number of bus shelters that were removed when hard stands were upgraded throughout the town a few years ago, with a program to reinstate bus shelters over the next 5 years within each budget cycle as to be determined by council.
All right, that one is now up on the screen. So can I seek a seconder, please, for this motion? Ms Potter, thank you. So that's seconded. Councillor Sandro, oh, sorry. Ms Lysandro.
That's okay. I was a councillor.
Old habits. You're
That's
well
okay.
recognised in
You
our
never know, I
chamber.
might come back.
So please feel free to speak to your motion.
Yes, just very briefly, as the motion indicates, when the Department of Transport upgraded the majority of the bus stops to allow for disability access on the hard stand, the responsibility of bus shelters is for the town. Over a number of years, the town hasn't been, providing bus shelters. And I guess to encourage people to take public transport and not be in full sun or in the rain, it would be ideal for the town to have some type of a program to reinstate some of those bus shelters. I mean, it's up to the town when they deal with this motion at the next meeting whether they want to, approve it or even just change it in terms of its length of time. But I think it is feasible that the town look at all those shelters that were removed and have some type of a plan going forward to reinstate some of those and possibly even have additional ones. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm formally going to ask, is there any dissent to this motion? No, there being no dissent, going to ask now for a show of hands as formally required. Those in favour, please raise your hand and keep them raised until we can count the votes. $28 in favour. Those against, please raise your hand. Noting there are 0 votes against, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Ms Lysandro, you have another motion?
Yes, that the town of Victoria Park investigate the restoration and costing of preserving the historic brick tram stop in front of Edward Millen Park on Albany Highway and to liaise with Transperth as it remains a current working bus shelter.
Bringing up some great ones tonight, Ms Lysandro.
Things that I should have.
Is there someone who would wish to second this motion? Ms Ammons-Noble at the back? Yes? All right, thank you. Ms Lysandro, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, just very briefly. Having been a part of the council in relation to the redevelopment of Edward Millen Park, I feel that we did find out that the brick bus shelter that was there was a historic tram shelter, and I guess looking at its condition, it should be preserved as something that is historic as part of the town. It's just basically to liaise with Transperth. Transperth may be the owner of that tram stop, but it would be ideal as part of that redevelopment to look at somehow later on in the track to preserve that bus shelter in its form, given that I think there is another one diagonally opposite the old Princess Margaret Hospital that has been preserved by their council. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms Lissandro. So I'm formally going to ask, is there any dissent against this motion? All right, so there's no dissent, so I'll ask formally for a show of hands. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised so we can count the votes. Thank you. So that's 28 in favour. All those against, please raise your hand. Noting there are no votes against, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Ms Lissandro, I understand you have another motion.
Yes, I have one more. I did want to do more, but I thought I better not. That the Town of Victoria Park investigate and consider doing a community survey on future upgrades to Parnham Park, Carlisle, in the 2025-2026 budget cycle, as well as interacting with relevant stakeholders and nearby nursing homes to create an inviting and accessible park for all.
All right, we have that up on the screen now. Can I seek a seconder, please, for this motion? Is there a seconder? Ms Potter, thank you. Seconded. Ms Lissandro, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Yes. For many years, I think the residents around Parnham Park in Carlisle have felt that it would do with some attention and some upgrades. And also having witnessed some of the nursing home residents who live in, I believe, Windsor Park, the accessibility of the park is very restricted for them. And I guess Carlisle feels a bit neglected in a way, particularly with Parnham Park not having been on the budget. I know that it eventually will be, but I think probably doing another survey to see see what the sentiments are in relation to residents and the surrounding, I guess, stakeholders and that kind of stuff would be ideal for the town to move forward in having some type of a plan for Parnham Park, given that it's probably one of the larger reserves in the town on the Banksia side. And I know that a lot of Carlisle residents would greatly appreciate knowing when that park will be upgraded or even providing feedback for that park. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any dissent to this motion? Not seeing any, so I'll formally put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. $28 in favour. All those against, please raise your hand. Noting there are no votes against, declare that carried unanimously.
And thank you to the gallery.
Thanks, Ms Lissandro, for bringing those forward. Are there any other motions that anyone wishes to put on the table? Mr Gleeson, please come forward, and then I'll go to the people on the other side of the gallery after you. Do we, by any chance, have the wording for your motion, Mr Gleeson?
My motion is to the council. As councillors, I'd like you into the future, any expenditure in your area over $40,000, you must go and ask at least 3 streets around that area to get a consensus whether they want it or not. We are spending much too much money on the officers of this council doing things that they think is great for our suburb, and we don't need them. And we've got to start saving money. You think that's funny? You've got to start saving money for us. We are overrated. and we're paying far too much rates. And as our executive managers of our council, I expect you to help out by going and speaking to at least 3 streets when they get expenditure over 40,000. That's my motion.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Gleeson. I've made a note of the words of that, as has the Manager of Governance. We might not be able to get that all typed out exactly as you said it, but it is basically you're asking council to ensure that any expenditure in our area over $40,000, we have to survey at least 3 streets surrounding that project before incurring that expenditure. Is that essentially the motion that you
No,
put
that's
forward?
exactly what I expect
right.
of the council,
Yep.
because you'll get exactly you'll get what they want, not what the council think they need.
Okay, Mr.
Thank
Gleeson,
you.
I need to call for a seconder for your motion before you can speak to it. So I follow the formal process I've followed for everyone. Is there a seconder for this motion? There being no seconder, I'm afraid the motion lapses. Thanks, Mr. Gleeson. Appreciate that. Now, we had some 2 hands went up separately, so I'm going to go with Ms. Whitten first and Mr. Sercombe second. Thank you.
Hello again. Oh, I'm not very tall. I would like to move that the Council for the Climate Emergency Program puts on its agenda in its review to remove gas A from its town-owned buildings, and then as a second point for programs for residents.
So, Ms. Whitten, I'll just read what I've noted down to see if that relevantly accords with your motion. It would be that in the review of the town's climate emergency plan, council shall include consideration of 1, removal of gas from town-owned premises, and 2, support initiatives for residents for the removal of gas from their properties.
Yep.
Does that accurately summarise it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, yep. All right, thank you. Can I seek a seconder, please, for this? So seconded the lady who came up and spoke before. And sorry, if you could just shout out your name again, please.
Steph Costa.
All right, Ms. Costa, thank you. So we've got a seconder. So, Ms. Whitten, would you like to speak? You've got up to 3 minutes to speak on your motion.
Oh, just very briefly, I believe that removal of gas from town buildings is a very positive step towards Vic Park's goals for climate change. Gas is not a transition fuel. It will add to our emissions, and as much as humanly possible, obviously we cannot control what people do within their own homes, but we can encourage them as best that we can. But the town has control over its own buildings, and I would like to see it removed.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask, is there any dissent to this motion? No, in that case, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. That's 21 votes in favour. Please raise your hand if you're against the motion. 4, is that what we get? 4. So 4 people are against, so I declare that carried. Thank you. Ms. Whitten, did you have another motion, or that was it for you?
No, thanks. This is great fun.
When you said it was great fun, I thought you were going to say you're going to keep going. But no. All right. Mr. Sercombe, please come forward. Good night, Mr. Gleeson.
Thanks very much. Jethro Sercombe from Eastwick Park. The motion that I have not sent through, so you'll have to write fast. No, it's not. The Town of Victoria Park reviews the usage rules of the Vic Park community space on Miller Street to remove those rules that put barriers in place for community groups, in particular removing requirements for public insurance coverage in order to, public liability insurance coverage in order to increase accessibility and usage.
All right, so just as a brief summary, it's for the Town of Victoria Park to review the usage rules of the Victoria Park community space to remove barriers to accessibility for community groups, including the requirement for public liability insurance for those groups. That would be roughly it. We'll get the full wording from the recording, but if you're happy that that has accurately summarised it to read it back. Can I seek a seconder, please? Seconded, Ms Ammons-Noble was first up the back. Thank you. Mr Sercombe, would you like to speak to your motion? Thank you.
Sure. So first, I just want to congratulate the town on the provision of the Vic Park community space. It's a really high-quality community asset. It's really excellent. I'm proud that we're able to have these kind of free spaces that create opportunities for community members to connect and to organise. My motion is regards to ensuring that the space gets the demand it deserves. I have some concerns about the barriers that have been put in place for usage. I'm chair of the Vic Park Collective. We've used the space a number of times, but given that the community centre and the arts centre now charge for space usage, this has become one of the few spaces that is free for community use. We have been approached by local groups who would love to use the space, but they're asking for us to auspice them in order to use the space because they can't meet the insurance requirements for the space. My worry is the rules may have been overcooked in order to manage the space, particularly the need for incorporated groups to have millions in public liability insurance and the lack of ability to book regular place at the space. I'd hate to see a situation where the building owners say, see, no one wanted this in the first place, you shouldn't have made us do it. Just because the rules that have been put in place are a bit over the top.
I'd be tempted to say what I think the building owners might say, but I won't say that in a public meeting, Mr Sercombe. Thank you for that. Can I ask, is there any dissent to this motion? Not seeing any indications, so I'm going to put it straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Mr Sercombe, do you want to raise your hand on your own motion? $28 in favour. All those against, please raise your hands. Nope, there being no votes again, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr Sercombe, you have another motion?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Now, did I see someone else had their hand up? They've got a motion that they want to put? No? Oh, Mr Knight, you want to come forward? I think you know how to do this well.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. Apologies, I also didn't send this through. But the motion is for the town to allocate $10,000 from the 24-25 Urban Forest Canopy Strategy budget and $10,000 from the 25-26 Urban Forest Canopy Strategy budget to plant and maintain at least 20 Marri trees, sorry I don't have the Latin name, in Harold Rossiter and Fraser Parks this calendar year.
I'm just going to seek some clarification from you, Mr. Knight. So I've written down the $10,000 from the 24-25 budget, which is the current budget year, to plant, and $10,000 from the 25-26 budget, which we've yet to adopt, to plant at least 20 marri trees at Harold Roster Reserve. But I've noted down the words "in this calendar year." So that would mean requiring us to plant them, but you're proposing we take money from an existing budget, but
Okay,
then
could I
take
amend it
money
then
from a
to
future budget?
20,000 from this calendar year?
That would make more sense to
Would
me.
that-
Yep, I
Okay.
understand what you're trying to say there with regards to
Just so
that.
it's planted this winter.
Yes, I certainly understand that. So in terms of the proposal for planting at least 20 of them in this calendar year, that just to make sure we're clear, that would be by 31 December 2025?
Preferably earlier, but
calendar.
yes.
Well,
yes,
but when you
yes.
say this calendar year, it ends on the 31st of December 2025. So if it's to be planted
Okay,
in
well-
this calendar year, that's the time frame you're speaking of, because it's important about our planting seasons. We do more than a year's worth of preparation for a planting season. We have to order our tree stock, and often if you try to get tree stock at the last minute, you can't get it from any of the
Understood.
nurseries.
Perhaps the manager of operations, when's the last date that
Yep,
you would normally...
I can certainly ask a question of the Chief Operations Officer or the Chief Community Planner about our urban forest program in terms of trying to do something like this, because there's only a couple of months left now, well, 3 or 4 months left of this financial year, and we do have a mid-year budget review item that's on the current council's agenda for next week's council meeting. So this is kind of tight potentially, because normally these types of motions will get considered at a future meeting, and that may or may not be next week. Ms. Adams, is there anything that you're able to say with regards to the proposal in terms of timing and the ability to get at least 20 trees ordered for this? And if it has to go to Mr. Doy, I'm happy to ask him about it too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will just say probably 2 things. One is about the stock. We're not sure of stock. We do our stock orders well in advance of that calendar year's planting. And the second is also just with regards to the timing. We normally do that planting during the season when there is sufficient water. So it would be well, if it was, they would be planned to be well before December.
Yeah, I think Ms. Adams makes a good point. We would normally start our planting between probably June and be finished it by the end of July or the first day of August, which actually doesn't leave a lot of time to try and get stock of this calibre or this size. Mr. Doy, anything further you could add? No. All right, but you're content with the motion that you've put up now, that it's clear you're looking for 20,000 from that budget that
Yes,
we
please,
currently
yeah.
have. Thank you. All right, can I seek, is there a seconder for this motion? Mr. Garswood, thank you. Is seconded. Mr. Knight, would you like to speak now to your motion? You have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. It's my understanding that the staff are not going to be planting any trees in these parks this year. So I would just like to see some trees go in this calendar year, because the canopy is it's pretty patchy in places. If you can't, I understand that you're doing the urban forest canopy strategy. If that these parts can't be included in that, then that's why I would hope that you could find some money just to put it forward, just to get them going. That's all.
I appreciate your passion and enthusiasm, Mr. Knight.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask, is there any dissent to this motion? No indication of dissent. I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour? So 4 were 25. All those against, please raise your hand. There being 0 against, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Knight. You've thought of another one?
Yeah, I've got one more.
I will say, I should have said at the outset, I'm putting a maximum time limit on this meeting of 9 o'clock, but we're well below that at the moment, Mr. Knight. So, yep, your
Okay,
next
very
one.
quickly. Sorry, I haven't written this out. That the town commissions a report on the phase out of glyphosate. A report to council. Could you word that better? But
All right, what I have is that the town commissions a report to council on the phasing out of the use of glyphosate for weed treatment within the town. Is that all right?
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Okay, so that's moved by Mr. Knight. Can I seek, is there a seconder, please? Seconded, Ms. Potter. Thank you. Mr. Knight, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you. Look, probably not much to say. There's a few question marks around the use of glyphosate. And I think some local governments have gone to steam weeding and things like that. So I think it's something that we should be looking at in Vic Park, not being a huge area. And I think it's good for public health concerns, perhaps. So yes, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Noting, of course, that the town does also use steam treatments. It tries to use it in the most appropriate places, but currently you are right, we are still using glyphosate in some places. So thank you for that. I'll formally ask, is there any dissent to this motion? Being no indication of dissent, I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. So 23 in favour, all those against? There being none against, I will declare that carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Knight. Is there anyone else who has any motions they wish to bring forward? No, there being no further motions, I will close that item on the agenda. Thank you very much to everyone who brought forward motions tonight. We've really appreciated listening to the things that you are passionate about, and we'll look forward, as I'm sure you will, to the reports that will come to council in due course about these matters. And now, there being no further business of this annual meeting of electors, I declare it closed at 7:47 p.m. Thank you so much to everyone who came along tonight. Thank you to those who joined us at the community mingle beforehand. We hope you enjoyed the opportunity. Very much appreciate the chance to share and hear from you about things that are important. And to those who couldn't be here in the chamber tonight but joined us on live streaming, thank you very much and good evening. We're adjourned. you.